Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Cafe. We're going to give it a few more minutes before getting started, just to let folks join us. And then I'm going to turn it over to Winton Jones. I'm Laura Riley. I'm the coordinator of Chicago Wilderness Alliance. All right. Well, I can keep an eye on folks who are still hoping to join. Ted and Winton, I'm going to turn it over to you. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Laura. You go ahead, Ted.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ted Hafner, and I'm the climate lead for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Climate Initiative. In case you're not familiar with the Chicago Wilderness Alliance is a network partnership of over 250 organizations and individuals that work to implement landscape scale, sustainability, nature-based solutions to climate change, and community resilience approaches to conservation in and around the southern shores of Lake Michigan. Partner geographies include Southeast Wisconsin, Northeast Illinois, Northwest Indiana, and Southwest Michigan. And we bring together leaders, experts, and conservation professionals at all stages of their careers to share diverse voices and perspectives and to work toward a common vision. That common vision is to create a vibrant, accessible region where people and nature thrive. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Winton and all of his work to create today and to make it happen. And Winton, why don't you go ahead and take away what we're gonna do today, please.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Appreciate it. So everyone, my name is Winton Jones. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Urban Efficiency Group. For those who don't know, sustainability is the ability to maintain at a certain rate or level. Some would even say that it's the balance of environment, equity, and the economy. Urban Efficiency Group is a minority-owned sustainability design firm. So we're very charged with energy equity, and we are firm believers in environmental justice overall. So we advocate for all people and advise municipalities on how to be more intentional, inclusive, and equitable when they engage in a community development process and their various planning approaches. We serve about 14 communities in West Suburban Cook County called C4, the Cross Community Climate Collaborative. And that's these basically, the executive team is led by Mayor Katrina Thompson for the Village of Broadview, President Vicky Skaman from the Village of Oak Park, and President Kathy Aducci from the Village of River Forest, led also by the President and CEO of Urban Efficiency Group, Darnell Johnson, as well as the founder and executive director of 7 Generations Ahead, Gary Coonan. We've all kind of joined on this ambition together in the name of sustainability solidarity. And so we could collectively act against climate change. Our community partners share ideas, strategies, as well as challenges they face to shorten the learning curve and to make sure, the less resource communities can also engage in climate change practices. It's no coincidence that our paths crossed with Chicago Wilderness Alliance, and they've been very instrumental in providing assistance for our initiatives, ranging from sharing their professional network to building strategies for longevity, and even where it all began, where they originally started providing technical support and guidance as far as asset and GIS mapping, and also analyzing social vulnerability indices. A lot of high-level topics that essentially we all need to know and understand for equitable and intentional community development. Since then, we've been able to find more synergies that naturally arose through the common themes of service and the need to work in unison to pull ourselves out of this global climate crisis. They even have an emerging leaders focus area led by one of our speakers today, Danny Abu. They are an inspirational and a true testament to what is needed to elevate society onto a better trajectory with a brighter and safer future. They and the Chicago Wilderness Alliance believe that we need to keep uplifting conversations and environmental awareness and illuminate the multitude of pathways that exist in our professional industries But this knowledge also needs to be passed on to ensure that we're evolving and not dredging down the same destructive path that we have done historically. This partnership has been so great because we have also believe in uplifting you all within Urban Efficiency Group. You know, we have a framework called the System of Sustainability, and one of the pillars is uplifting you all into these professions, into these conversations, so that it's not a burden that you're not prepared to challenge and face off. You know, we have tools and skills now, so we're very intentional about passing those on, empowering you all and equipping you to be the compassionate and mindful leaders that you will be in your professional careers. So it's not all about us just talking and sharing what we feel. In the chat, you can see that we've dropped a link to our Emerging Leaders Intergenerational Thought Leader Priority Survey. That's really your first crack at voicing what you think we should be focusing on in terms of community development, you know, what you need to succeed and thrive throughout the course of your life, but also within respect to your hyper-local community. So definitely click on that link. It doubles as a priority survey and a registration form to Greentown, the Climate and Equity Conference. Basically, at the Climate and Equity Conference, we'll be talking about all of these similar things. It's actually at Trident College in River Grove, Illinois, happening on Thursday, June 22nd. It is an all-day event, so from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. We'll be talking and discussing on different topics about the environment, sustainability, and creating lasting equitable change. So definitely sign up for that and share with your friends as well. You know, this is the first time that Greentown has elevated a youth focus, and that's what we're calling our Emerging Leaders Plenary Session. So tons of overlap between all the work that we do within Chicago Wilderness Alliance, but also all the work being done within UEG and C4. It's really just an amazing time to be alive. And a lot of what we're doing today kind of revolves around the understanding that we need to bring you all into the conversation, but also continue to, you know, fight the cause and create more avenues for advocacy and elevate more platforms for you to share your perspectives and opinions. So I'll give you all some time to fill out that survey, but we'll definitely be plugging in the event throughout this virtual event today. So please stay tuned for more details. With all this empowerment in mind, I feel like it's a perfect pivotal point to introduce our inspiring speakers for today. I've worked with each of these individuals in a few different capacities, but it's always felt like an overwhelming warmth and appreciation for the effort and purpose that they carry in each of their different roles. I would love to do a great intro for everyone, but I feel that I may have already been talking too much at this point. So I'll let you all, you know, follow one another, but we'll start with Danny Abu, Director of Community Programs and Partnerships at the Brushwood Center. Then go on to Danny Robles, Director of Climate Policy at the Illinois Environmental Council, and then ending with Ted Hafner, you know, landscape architect and one of the leaders for the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Climate Action Plan. So sorry for all that word vomit, but Danny, go ahead and take it away for us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Quentin. I think all of us kind of have pretty big titles that are kind of a mouthful, but are fancier ways of saying much simpler concepts. So as was said, my name is Danny Aboud. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Director of Community Programs and Partnerships for Brushwood Center, which is a very fancy way of saying I get to build relationships with different organizations and individuals in order to create accessible and equitable programming that connects people to nature and art, and ultimately to the health benefits of doing both those things. Even simpler way of saying it is a lot of my job is getting to take youth and families on hikes and get to do fun crafts, which is kind of ridiculous to get paid for that. It's pretty wonderful. But I spent a lot of time getting to talk with people about what it means to them to connect with the non-human natural world, to be a part of a landscape, what it means to be part of a community, and how community building looks to the different individuals I work with. We talk a lot about the things we care about, how we can use art as a way of advocating for those things. And I get to have ultimately a lot of fun in that role and get to be pretty outspoken about a lot of things that matter to me, which is awesome. I also serve on a couple of the committees for initiatives for Chicago Wilderness Alliance. I co-chair the Increasing Equitable Access to Nature Committee and the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Roadmap. And in those spaces, we're trying to further increase equitable access to green space through different collaborations, through sharing best practices, and finding ways to help support organizations as they navigate, shifting their own systems and policies to better reflect and support and foster equitable access to nature. So a lot of different avenues for that. In my personal time, I also am on the leadership team of Out in Nature, which is a group that organizes queer nature outings for the queer community in Chicagoland. And we do all kinds of fun stuff. But ultimately, I got involved in all of this because I studied environmental science and I really hated doing lab work. I didn't want to be a restoration ecologist because it did not really click with me, but I really liked talking to people. And I also come from a pretty nature-based background, but maybe not in the more conventional way. My family took a lot of walks. I spent a lot of time outside with my dad and my grandmother, my teta, who taught me how to pick grape leaves from random yards. And on our walks, we would find mint patches, and we foraged a lot and made food together. And so my connection to nature was always one that was more about reciprocity with land and recognizing the things that Earth provides for us. And then I went into school where everything was very formalized and from a very white Western ecological lens about what conservation is, what's worth conserving, what nature can and can't be. I read a lot of Aldo Leopold over and over again and got really sick of it. And I was much more interested in connecting with people about what they felt about nature spaces, how to help people access resources. I worked a couple internships through farmers markets, spending a lot of time just trying to help people access food benefits and recognizing that as an important part of the environmental movement. And so I got a lot more focused on the environmental justice component of environmentalism. And for me, that means working with people and trying to build community. I think building connections and having strong community ties is one of the most important forms of climate mitigation. Most of my work at Brushwood Center all happens up in Lake County, and something we saw a lot during the pandemic was how community ties saved a lot of lives, especially in communities where there's not as much access to healthcare. We have entire neighborhoods that see health workers through their libraries instead of through their local health systems because communities came together and said, where are people accessing resources? We know who has what. How can we come together and make sure that people have what they need? We also saw a lot of people opening up food pantries out of their basement because they knew that there are people who weren't accessing different resources. They also, I know one mother who started a food pantry and started delivering food to her neighbors that she knew were disabled or otherwise unable to access these different spaces. And so that kind of community care became really vital during a crisis. And I think we'll see that level of community care being vital throughout all of the crises that we see predicted with continued unmitigated climate change. And so that's kind of in a nutshell my interest. I'm really passionate about people and the planet and making sure those connections are strong and evident, and helping people recognize that we're all part of nature. We're not separate from it. We don't live near it. Anywhere we are is nature because we're inherently natural. Yeah. Did I touch on all the things I'm supposed to touch on? I feel like I just talked for a very long time.
You did great. Do you have any advice, words of wisdom?
I feel like really just recognizing your natural set, how natural you are in your own state, and that's enough. And you don't have to have grown up backpacking and camping to be an environmentalist. And the value of connecting to people where they are. I'd also say for young people, know your worth. Don't take less than you deserve for positions, and don't be afraid to assert yourself in spaces. I think working with a lot of young people, I'm very confident in our next generation, some of the most compassionate, empathetic, and with it people I've ever spoken with. We've all been under 18. And you all deserve to be well compensated for anything you do, and you're completely crucial to any field that you enter. So you feel fully entitled to act like it. Don't feel like you have to be bowing down to the elders in the room. I think it's a little high time a lot of people get out of the way for the next generation. So
Thank you, Danny. Perfect. Got to be change makers in this space. So I think we'll probably wait till after everyone speaks for Q&As. Danny Robles, you're up next.
It really is an honor to follow Danny Aboud on this panel. Danny is mi tocaya, which in Spanish, Mexican Spanish means we share the same name. And I've had the pleasure and opportunity to work with Danny on several different events in the last few years. But yeah, I think for me, a lot of it is centered on community and like trying to identify like, what does community mean for me.
You're muted.
Okay, you guys hear me? I was having trouble with this mic. So I think where I was at was like the word community and going through this long process of identifying like what does community mean to me, and a lot of that is built on my own immigration story. So I grew up undocumented in the U.S. Since I was 7 years old. I lived here in the U.S. and everything I did growing up was kind of like to protect myself from the system at play, from hiding myself from other people. And I just remember like starting off college and not really knowing how to like get through it, just because I couldn't like request funding opportunities. Scholarships weren't always available and open. But that just didn't like let me like stop. Like I found ways to get through it. And through that experience, I learned a lot about what justice really means. I got my degree in criminology, law, and justice, which is nowhere near what we do here in environmentalism. But that was what I needed to hone in on to get to where I'm at today. When I graduated college, I actually started a career in corporate investigations. I worked that for 7 years out of college. And for me, what really kicked me to get involved with climate change and work through hang on. I gotta pick up an order, but I'll keep talking as we go. So what really got me motivated was 2018. I saw myself in this corporate position, in a position that had been working really hard to get, and realizing that I wasn't satisfied, realizing that the world around me felt like it was crumbling. We were going through a presidential administration that was targeting immigrants, targeting Black people, targeting so many different kinds of communities across the country. And that really destabilized like my sense of like community, like what was going on within my own backyard. And I just remember like sitting in my office like Black Friday 2018, and right after 2018 they had just elected Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I remember reading an article about her taking over Nancy Pelosi's office with the Sunrise Movement, which was like a youth-led organization to combat climate change. And reading that article, I saw those like very brave kids, like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids determined to tell the former Speaker of the House and the upcoming Speaker of the House that she wasn't doing enough to combat climate change, and she wasn't doing enough to talk about our futures and our lives. And that just motivated me to like say that I'm done with corporate. I am done doing investigations. I want to get involved. I want to move the conversation and bring change. And for me, like the thing that kind of stuck to me was immigration. And what ended up happening after that was having a transformation of what does immigration mean in the global scope of climate change, and realizing that it's all very connected, right? All these trades agreements that we've undergone over the past 60 to 80 years have caused all this amount of commodity exchanges that have increased the amount of fossil fuel expenditure and have created the system where we're at, where we're seeing increased levels of greenhouse emissions. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of countries in the global south being put in precarious situations where they can't be inhabitable. And every report that we keep looking from the IPCC and other scientific experts shows that within the next 20 to 30 years, a lot of those countries are going to be impacted by climate change. And there's going to be up to potentially 1 billion people displaced across the world. And like reading those articles, reading that information, just made me realize, I was doing all this work to bring in new Congress people to office. I was working to move the needle on the conversation, but what really centered to me was that we really need to have a global conversation on what this climate change means, how that looks with borders, how that looks with the way that we accept people into our new homes, and how we tackle like the long-term sustainability conversation, right? Because the way that we're currently functioning is that we do a lot of trades across the world, and we continue creating this issue of displacement, of increased fossil fuel, and more importantly, we treat people like commodities. There's this whole mentality that a good immigrant is one immigrant that can do a high-skilled job, when in reality, up until 200 years ago, there were no borders. There were no real borders. Like people just like migrated freely across different parts of the Americas, across different parts of Africa, across Southeast Asia, and I think that is like a big point for the mentality that we need to drive. So I've been fortunate enough that over the last couple of years, I've been able to work with people like Danny and organizations like the Green Deal Network, and currently in my role with the Environmental Council as a climate policy director, to start putting together tables where we have these long-term conversations on what does climate migration mean, what are the current things that we can do at the local level. I also work on workforce development, on clean jobs, and that's something that I'm excited to bring to young folks, that the state and our federal government is putting a lot of funding so we can build out sustainable future that we're looking for. And we're also looking to push back against the transportation systems. So I have a pretty extensive set of roles between transportation, workforce, and climate migration, but it all brings me a lot of excitement because all this is going to take young people to get involved, roll up their sleeves, and make the change that we want. And we can all be those 17, 18-year-olds in Nancy Pelosi's office or President Biden's office next year and continue driving the conversation. So I'm really happy to be here and be able to chat about what's possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danny. Very powerful. We'll go ahead to Ted, and then we'll break for Q&As after that.
Thanks, Winton, for putting me after the two of them. I cannot follow that up. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. I'm going to really struggle now. So my name is Ted Hafner. You've already heard from me. I'm here to talk about a couple things today, but like Danny Robles, my journey was a little bit different. I started off as in tech, right? I was an English major, so I started writing manuals for software products. I hated it. I had to wear a beeper. I got advanced to be called in on like Sunday nights when things crashed. It sucked. I hated it. Nature literally saved me. I walked into a greenhouse to buy some seeds for my roommate at the time, who was a teacher for first and second grade. It was a Sunday. I had been called into work. My beeper went off. I stepped into the greenhouse and I was like, whoa, what is this? I didn't know where I could work. I was not happy. I was hogging the shower for 45 minutes at a time in the morning. My roommates were pissed, right? that saved me. I didn't end up liking the retail aspect of plants and nature, but I did look around and I found landscape architecture through doing a lot of grunt work and landscaping, planting and design and creating. And when I went into landscape architecture, I started understanding that we used to design public spaces for basically demonstrations, which is great, but they were very nature void, right? I really believe in the power of collecting democratically and protesting and all of that. But I felt that these landscapes and these plazas that were being created as part of development were not using nature to its fullest impact and intent, right? You can grow food through nature. That's how we get that. Completely not acknowledged in landscape architecture. Same with flood interventions and shade and creating oases and really beautiful places that help calm our bodies and our minds and actually function on multiple levels. Landscape architects at the time, and still to a large degree, only look at maybe one function or two functions, but we really need to look at like 5 or 6 functions. So that's how I got into this. And then I got to a point where I wasn't seeing my kids enough. They were really little and I was living in the studio and that wasn't good. So I looked around at climate change solutions and found conservation. At about the time that nature-based solutions were being talked about and researched and understood as a potential mitigating factor for climate. Obviously, we can't do this if we don't shut down or redesign our transportation and our energy sectors. But this livability component is still a very misunderstood aspect of climate change and potential solutions. So that's sort of my background story. Why I'm here today, following Danny, very poorly, I might add, is because I want to talk to you guys about the points that were made about next gen training and support. Right. I think part of my journey is the fact that I'm in a lost generation because of the socio-demographics of baby populations after World War, right? My parents had me really late, so I don't fit in any traditional generational things. I'm like in between them, right? So I see all the people up above who are still in, they never supported me. I don't feel that, so I want to give that back to you guys. And I know it's necessary because we don't have a whole lot of time. The second thing I want to nod to today is, excuse me, I'm getting a little like emotional here. Climate in my book is connected to everything, right? So to both Danny's points, you can get in this through really ancillary movements and non-traditional careers. And I think that's what's really necessary, because it's those point of views that are going to really help us find some of these mitigating solutions so that we can take the time to shift our economies and our systems, which are gonna take a while, unfortunately. And we seem to be up against some big hurdles coming down from above, whether it's government, whether it's bosses, whether it's, the people in power now that we've referred to earlier, that in my mind, some of them do a good job at successing and mentoring, but not a whole lot of them do enough of. So because climate is connected to everything, I feel these two things are really connected. And in terms of educating yourself, it doesn't matter. You don't need to be an environmental person. You don't need to be a biologist. You don't need to be a landscape architect. Climate is to the point now where everything has a way in and everything can be a solution. Whether you're a mathematician, an economist, an artist, right? A non-traditional person like Danny who went into criminal science. I'm sure that's not the right term for it, but right? So we can all make an impact, and I'm here to encourage you to make that impact and to help you support you in making that impact in terms of, if you're struggling with something, in prep for this Zoom webinar, right? A lot of the people on it yesterday in prepping for this made some really amazing points where my jaw was on the floor, but they couldn't connect it to bigger patterns. So I sent out a couple things and they were like, whoa, this makes sense all of a sudden, right? So it's that kind of information sharing and support and resources to give you all the confidence that Danny was talking about, right? The tools so that you can really come up and make a difference. But you can't do it alone, right? And what we're finding is there's a lot of resistance from the old guard. And that's really frustrating to me. And I want to help support everybody that's younger than me, so that we can move on with our lives and make a better place, right? And we can't do that without each other and without the support. So that's sort of my story and why I'm here and what I bring to the table in this conversation. And if you want to schedule time with me, I'm happy to set an hour or two, talk more about your journey, my journey. I do that a lot with people. So if that's helpful to you, please find my contacts through Winton. I can even put them in the chat later. But thank you for coming and thank you for allowing the three of us or whoever you allow into this conversation that can help you to help you. So thanks. Winton, back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Ted. Definitely empowering and enlightening. If anyone has any questions, feel free to turn your mic off and my hot and ready.
Yeah, my question is for the first Danny. So I'm going into college next year. I feel like it's most likely that I'll get a degree in environmental science and policy or something. Although again, who knows where any of us will be in 4 years, especially going into college. But I'm just curious about how your degree and kind of your educational experience shaped your life and your career and how you ended up where you are now.
That's a really good question. Yeah, I went to Loyola University in Chicago in their environmental science program, which was great. In a lot of ways, it was also, like I said, I think we were introduced to a very specific kind of environmentalism that I didn't fully feel represented by as, one, as a queer person, also as a person, as an Arab person, and not necessarily just a white person. It was a very specific kind of environmental education that I think they've expanded a lot now, which is great since I've been there and talking with other folks and people who still work there. So that's cool. But I think the most valuable thing I got out of my undergraduate education was really a lot of internship experience, because my program had a lot of different internships and I just kind of tried everything. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do within the environmental field. I just knew that it was something I was passionate about and wanted to know more about. And so my first job, I worked in a biodiesel lab making biofuel. My next internship, I was at the city of Evanston as just kind of doing data entry, which was really boring, but I learned about what municipal work could be like. And then I ended up getting to be on a oh, sweet. Yeah, you're familiar with the place. I ended up getting to be an intern with our student-run farmers market, which was really influential because that's when I realized I really cared a lot about community engagement and getting to interact outside of a campus setting with actual community members and people who were rooted in this neighborhood. And then I also got to do a research project on environmental gentrification. So getting kind of exposure to qualitative data analysis and to, literature on environmental justice and environmental science from a different perspective was really influential. I mean, I definitely retained some of my environmental science, ecology knowledge, but a lot of it I learned later. I was not very great at plant identification coming right out of my undergrad experience, but having led a lot of really curious kiddos on walks since then and having to learn because they constantly ask me, what is that? Who is this? What's it called? It's honestly where I got a lot of those skills is just from the field and from going out on hikes with friends who are much more talented naturalists than I am. So I think it really taught me the importance of building community, of finding your people. I think I was able to find a really great group of people in my program that kind of helped build up some of the conversation and dialogue I felt was lacking in my classes. And then I also found community through the neighborhood I lived in and worked in. I found community through other queer naturalists and going out and getting to learn from each other. And so I think that's one of the best things, is really to try everything, like try different internships. Don't take unpaid internships if you can. Like, don't feel like you have to do it just to get experience. People shouldn't be taking unpaid labor from children or from young people and anyone at any age. And if you need to like have some kind of experience on your resume to get a paid position, just email me and we can make something up. I really like, so I really don't want people doing things for free. But yeah, I would say try as many different things as you can. Don't get stuck on one idea of what, like you said, you never know what you're going to be doing in 4 years. I had no idea that my job would be the way it is. It's really cool. I would say don't get too stuck on one idea of what you have to do, but give yourself space to explore different avenues and the freedom to say, like, I actually don't like this, and to turn it around. I spent a year doing a research internship on invasive cattails, and I hated every minute of it. And even though I got paid to do it and I invested like a year of free time into it, I was like, I'm just never going to touch this again. And I haven't. So I did make paper out of cattail fluff, which was kind of cool. But that was my my final piece of touching that project, was doing art. So I hope that answers your question. Try a lot of things. Don't feel like you have to be one version of something, and find your people.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else have any questions before we move on to the next portion of the event? I'm definitely going to keep the chat open and live. So as questions arise, please just drop them in the chat. But I'll give a quick pause for dramatic effect and sold. All right. So in this next portion of the event, we're definitely going to pivot into a more interactive session. Ultimately, everything that we've been doing is, yes, to prepare you all and equip you all with different tools, but also to hear from you all and provide opportunities for you to share your opinions, perspectives, and biggest concerns in terms of your long-term sustainability, but also the communities as well. So basically, I've been working with an executive team of high school students and college students to put together the Greentown Emerging Leaders Plenary Session. We've been talking about climate change, sustainability, how to create impactful change as the next generation thought leaders. And we know that research is the driving point of sustainability. Before you do anything, for it to be considered sustainable and equitable, one, you have to engage your community and the people that you want to serve. And two, you have to practice data-led decision-making. If you don't have data to drive the decisions that you choose, you're not making the most and best informed decision. And that, my friends, is how inequities and disparities happens. So here's where you all come into the equation right now. We've developed like a solid word bank for focus areas. Basically that overlap with the strategic approach that we call the system of sustainability. The system of sustainability breaks society into 6 sections that we define as priority areas that affect both people and the planet. So much like all of our professionals were mentioning earlier, there's not one thing that you do throughout the course of your day that can be drawn back to sustainability. Either you're doing it not that sustainable or you're doing it very sustainable. And these concepts can be elevated to more of a universal approach and a heightened consciousness and a way to engage with the society we live in. So we use this approach in our efforts to help C4 partners create local sustainability action plans. As we go into each priority area tonight, a representative from our executive team will share a snippet of the information. Sometimes that executive team member might be me, but it's still in the same heart and vein. Basically, we will share a snippet of how we can impact a specific priority area, and then we will identify objective categories, but tonight we're calling them focus areas. So we're going to go over 6 priority areas, and then for those 6 priority areas, we'll be deciding what should be our key focus areas within those priorities. So We'll be building more into the action plan at the Greentown Climate and Equity Conference and during the Emerging Leaders Plenary session. But tonight, we're really setting the foundation for what that framework can be. So you are definitely saving the day because without data, we can't make any decisions. So we appreciate you all for joining on here. And I believe Zen has joined us at this point, and she's really going to lead us with the place prompt priority.
Hi, everyone. I apologize. I can't turn my camera on because there's a lot going on, but I'm just gonna say a quick little snippet about the place priority and introduce myself, of course. So hi, everyone. My name is Zen, or you can call me Zanaya. I'm currently entering my senior year at Northern Illinois University. I'm a business major with a minor in nonprofit, and I'm also getting a certificate in grant writing. I'm also an intern between urban efficiency and urban efficiency group. So I've been helping Winston kind of help facilitate and coordinate the whole event for the conference next Thursday. And just a little bit about the place priority is when you think of place, you think of a sense of belonging and wanting to be a part of something. A lot of the time when you are in a place, you might not feel comfortable because of who's there, or there might be people that identify differently than you, but it isn't always just about being in a
You're muted.
sorry. And, everyone can hear.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. So yeah, it's not about just being in a place where everyone is the same, but also about being in a place where you feel comfortable and you're able to express yourself and be your authentic self. So when you think of place, what is a place you feel like that you can belong and that you don't have to hide behind the wall? You don't have to act a certain way because you're around a certain group of people. That's what I think of when I think of place. So when you guys decide to vote and do your what priority is the most important to you, or what you think is the most important to your community, keep in mind that you want it to be open and not just for you, but for everyone.
Thanks, Zen. So we have two ways that you can vote. You can utilize the link and the code on the screen, or you can pull open a separate tab. And we have the link embedded into the chat as well. So we'll give you a few moments to go ahead and rank out the different objective categories that we have here. Again, this is your time to speak your piece about what you think we should be focusing on in terms of the place priority area when we get into focus areas. So I'll give you all some time for that.
Hey, Winton,
Yes.
I'm noticing in this hierarchy that culture is listed as 4th and 10th. Do you want to have everybody that thinks culture is important just pick the 4th one and forget about the 10th one so it doesn't get repeated and split?
Yeah, thanks, Ted.
Okay.
Appreciate that. All right. Definitely got some votes in already. If I give it about 2 more minutes before we move on here. Basically, we'll be I believe once you pull up the link, you should be able to rank each one. on that screen.
Hey, Winton, which link is it?
Menti.com. Well, I know it's in the chat, but I want to make sure we can also do it through this one here, Menti.com.
I just dropped it in the chat again.
Okay, thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah, so once you pull up the link, you can kind of choose which one you want to do first. There are 12 options because we had a lot of insight from our executive team. Definitely got a good group of individuals, all passionate leaders, but wanting to create a change and really get engaged in these areas, because it's not always easy for you all as the next generation thought leaders to engage. All right. Eco-responsibility, inclusion, reducing car infrastructure. All these, and that's the thing. Another thing that I should probably disclose, we're doing this to create a framework for an intergenerational thought leader sustainability action plan. But the beautiful thing about these plans is that there's always going to be flexibility. Just because we say that this is a framework doesn't mean that this is the only route or way that you can engage in these areas. So just things to keep in mind as we go forward. I think we can go ahead and move on to prosperity at this point. I believe we'll probably go back and make some of this polling live, or not live, remote and audience based at some point. We switched it today for the sake of the event, but just in case you all didn't get a chance to go in and speak your piece on it, you all can do that now. Or later, I should say. Because I know that's a lot of voting that you have to do there. And I'll actually be doing the prompt overview for the prosperity priority area. It's definitely one of the more straightforward priority areas. But again, when we talk about sustainability and the different opportunities that exist, you have to be all encompassing when talking about the longevity of a community's economy, and the different avenues to success. We definitely have to focus on childhood development in schools when we're thinking about sustainability in that realm. But, it doesn't just stop there. As you see on the screen, we have these various areas that we can focus in, but definitely don't want to limit the types of opportunities that exist. One thing that I like to remind students is that if a community doesn't have a local business base, that community can't really aspire towards some of the next level and really heavy burdening opportunities that exist within sustainability planning or equitable development. So that's all I'll say on that. Go ahead and give it a try. Rank these priority focus areas in relation to the relevance and importance to you. Again, there is no one size fits all for a community. Every community has their various hyper-local issues, but we all have the same common goal and solution to want to create change, live in a better and safer world. So you all can follow up on the prosperity area for us. something in there. All right, I was gonna say, I don't know if my connection is just super slow or what's going on.
These are hard to think about questions, Winton. There are a lot too many good options.
Yeah, that you're right. Gotta slow my roll a little bit. It's just so exciting. Just like Ted and you know, Danny Abu, and I'm sure Danny Robles too. I just love hearing from you all as our future leaders. And with us all being advocates, this is like prime opportunity. Oh, we were on a call with the next generation thought leaders, and this is what they're thinking. Go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment, Winton. Like, there's a lot of hope in that generation, but there's a lot of fear and responsibility placed on that generation too, and that's really tough. And so that's, I think, what I was getting towards, and a lot of my comments is you're not alone, and you know, there are people like me, us, groups like this that really do care and want to uplift you and help you on your journey, because we see the unfairness and inequities, and we want to help deal with that as well.
Yeah, we're very much so ready and openly willing to be your shield from all the very initial hoopla that you might go through and when getting into climate change conversations. Uh, yes, do we have a lot of work to do? Of course, but we're paving the way as we speak, and really trying to change ideologies and narratives when we get into these conversations. We have so much power together, and it's once we realize that it when we'll really be able to overcome some of these obstacles that we're facing. But you all didn't sign on here to hear me talk. So I think, like I said, we'll have another chance for everyone to submit their ideas if they haven't yet. I know these are definitely some pretty long and open-ended topic areas. But now we want to go ahead and move on to our next priority area, which is health and well-being. I will actually be doing that one as well. But it is one of the most important ones, I say, because when we talk about climate change, yes, we understand that we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but we also need to understand of how it's all connected within the adverse health impacts that exist from unsustainable and inequitable planning, especially when we're thinking about environmental justice communities. There's so many different areas and ways that we're impacted, and a lot of it comes down to our health. We're still experiencing high volumes of our aunts, our uncles, our grandparents experiencing cancer-like situations, and it's just no reason or way for that to continue on. Ultimately, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about us continuing and thriving going through. So with all that in mind, we also need to incorporate healthy lifestyles, healthy eating. We need access to affordable and healthy food. These are all the different things that we could keep in mind and when thinking about the health and well-being priority. So give you some time to, think a little hard through these different focus areas, especially when we get into conversations about our health and well-being collectively, because as great as it is for you to be healthy, if we don't have a world, if we don't have each other to keep the world going, there's no point in it all. And it also just goes back to the saying that everything you do as far as sustainability is all inclusive and universal. If you're doing something unsustainable, that's going to adversely affect someone or some place or somewhere. It's going to affect something in a harmful way that you probably didn't intend to. But without that knowledge and awareness, you can never really know or understand what the consequences that your actions have led to or could lead to. We actually have one of our executive team members and liaisons from the health and well-being team on the call today, Rashai Wright. You know, definitely going to be super impactful to the world as life goes on. But, you know, it's going to work out well because we have each other. We have knowledge. And as long as we stick together and communicate, we can overturn all these different struggles that we could or would experience. All right, again, we'll keep the voting open as we go on. Actually, we'll give it a couple more minutes. I think I've been going a little too fast.
Winton,
Yeah.
for the next time you do this, maybe it's clear to everybody here, but the 12th ranked public center could, in my mind, use some more descriptors just so that I understand what it is. Maybe everybody else understands what it is, but by me just looking at this cold, it doesn't look like there's enough information, and that's why it's ranked 12th, right? But that's a crime if it actually is something important and we don't know what it is. Everything else I think is intuitive, but that one. So maybe that could help with some further descriptors.
Yeah, definitely a great point. Language is always going to be an interesting thing when we get into these conversations, because perspectives change from person to person. And, you know, for instance, when I think about public centers, I'm really thinking about some types of social centers, rec centers, cultural centers. That's kind of what I think about. But other folks, they might think of, you know, just a rec center, or maybe just a health center, or maybe it's just like a kiosk for the community. You know, maybe it's just a resource center,
Or a library, right?
right?
Those are public centers, and
Right.
those all take very different forms and definitions.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to work on that. But also something that, you know, I love to converse more with everyone on the call about, you know, our next generation thought leaders. Because, you know, a lot of the issues that we have in sustainability is these complex words, you know, that describe some of the most important and essential nuances in our lives and society. So learning how to break all these high level concepts down into something that's straightforward and easy to communicate is something that we work at on a daily basis. But I'm not gonna keep beating a dead drum there. We're gonna go on and move on to the connectivity priority area. Again, we'll have an opportunity to vote for those as well. I'll be doing that one too. Connectivity is really one of the, I would like to say, missed and undervalued focus areas when it comes to sustainability. And connectivity has a couple of different, you know, nuances within it. We're kind of talking about the transportation and the landscape and outlay of a community, you know, accessibility issues in terms of access to internet, accessibility issues in terms of how you can get around and to and from your community. You know, when we think about society and how to truly thrive and sustain, you know, we live in a day and age where if you don't have internet access or an email account, you can't go to school, you can't get a job, you can't even get in a workforce development program. And if, you know, as a community, if we don't have a lens on that, that's a huge disservice. And that is what I mean when we say we're not thinking intentionally and inclusively, that is where we see inequities start to arise. So similarly, within access issues for internet, transportation is also a game changer in terms of an individual's success and ability to thrive, but also the context of a community. If there aren't networks and systems set up to serve everybody so that everyone can, live and thrive, again, that's an adverse impact that I'm sure people don't want to happen, but if we're not focusing on it, that's how these things arise. So I'm gonna keep on drumming on that. These are some focus areas for the connectivity priority area. Kind of rank them according to your interest and the relevancy for what you think we should focus on. Access also, and thinking about infrastructure. Um, you know, electric vehicles, electric school buses, all of this emergent technology is nice, but we definitely have to make sure that everyone can access it and that those conversations are happening and are happening in a very fair and transparent way. So many things happen behind closed doors. And this is how you elevate them into the spotlight, by asking questions and by pressing upon your leaders to really share insight into areas that they may not want to or may not have been able to in the past. So we'll give some time to give that more results. All righty. Yep. Yes. Now we can silence myself. Kate, go ahead. She's on our executive team. That's a huge help for us. Kate Wallace.
Hi. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about living infrastructure, which I think is a really important priority, because for me and for a lot of people I know, connection with nature is kind of why they got involved with helping the climate. So living infrastructure is, the climate crisis is having negative impacts on wildlife as well as people, especially people living in poverty. So living infrastructure is really about promoting healthy wildlife and local ecosystems and mitigating the effects of climate change on people and communities, and then also helping communities flourish and connecting people with nature. So when I was thinking about it, one of the categories I thought about was nature education. I think I've received a really good education surrounding nature with, we raised plants, we raised different types of fish, we took field trips, and I think that in a large part has contributed to my interest in the climate and in helping the ecosystem. So I think nature education is really important. And then also just ecosystem health as a whole, which is, can be rainwater management, it can be land remediation, and then also, promotion of natural wildlife and local ecosystems. And finally, I thought of connection, which I think can entail a lot. I think that can That could mean community stewardship. It can mean communities coming together to help like the local forest preserves and the local ecosystems, but also like connection, both with people and with people's connection to nature. So, you know, access to green spaces, access to trees and communities. So those were some of the objectives that I kind of thought about, but I'll be curious to see what other people think of through, you know, their different experiences and their lenses. So.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Definitely have a great description. I feel like you've had a good grasp on it as well. Probably give one more minute before we move on to the last priority area. And again, we'll go back and make it on the audience pace. So that if you didn't get a chance to go through all the different ranking opportunities, you can kind of do that at the conclusion of the event, because we definitely do want to continue to hear from you. If you haven't already, please fill out that Emerging Leaders Intergenerational Thought Leader Priority Survey. Again, that's the very first chance to really voice your concerns, opinions, and perspectives in the conversations of sustainability. And we'll also be digging into that and pulling from that during our Greentown Emerging Leaders plenary session at the conference on Thursday, June 22nd. Alrighty, so now we're gonna move on to our last priority area. And did you want to speak? Yeah, here we go. Thanks, Maya.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Maya Nelson, and I am the Resource Regeneration Leader for the Emerging Leaders Executive Team. And I'm going to be a senior at Riverside Brookfield High School. So my community of Riverside is actually in C4. So we're actually pretty early in the process right now. But I am currently working with the Resource Regeneration team for my community. And so far, kind of what we've done is we've created overarching goals of what we want to accomplish in our community. And that includes switching to renewable energy, increasing recycling and composting rates, and in general, better education on these initiatives. Currently, our community, we have some of these different initiatives in place, but the community doesn't really know about them and that they exist. So we really need to make sure that all of these things are accessible to everybody and that everybody knows that they exist. And I think this is all really important because I think typically this is what you think of when you think of general like climate change and reducing greenhouse gases. And that's kind of where this falls into that category too, and how just renewable energy and composting and reducing all these greenhouse gases is what'll lead to a better future for everybody. And so kind of in the midst of this climate crisis, we're experiencing a lot of issues with air quality and just in general, like changing temperatures. And so really energy efficiency is what will reduce these pollutants that we are inhaling and help ensure for a better future. And places, neighborhoods that are close to like steel mills and farms are what really aid to these pollutants. And this then affects mostly people of color. And so it makes it, again, an even more necessity for equitability and accessibility to all of these things. And everybody says that you need to reduce, reuse, and recycle. But again, it's just really important that not everybody has access to both recycling and compost and garbage. And we just need to make sure that every community has access and education on these different things. So just kind of in general, that's what I think of when I think of resource regeneration, is again, just renewable energy and reducing your waste, but also being able to dispose of it properly. So again, I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about this topic. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. Yeah, definitely a lot of great work to be done in the topic area and priority area of resource regeneration. I remember I met Maya at our community listening session that we did in the village of Riverside back in January. So just in case you think, we're just, shucking and jiving here. No, we're actually engaged. We're actually trying to build capacity so communities can engage in these topics in all these different ways. And just like Maya, I'm super excited to see what these results boil down to. Yeah, data-led decision making is our only key, but folks have to know and understand, what we're talking about before we can actually create change and implement these, various strategies. We'll give a few more minutes for voting. Hey, Ted. I think I had a question that I probably should have asked before we. I feel like I saw you built out more slides to gauge audience's interest. Yeah, I think we should go ahead and kind of utilize them to close everything out. Or
Oh boy. Okay. Let me see if I can find where that is and share my screen then.
Okay.
Winton, you're gonna make this like asynchronous after, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I think the link sent in the chat was the wrong one because I just entered the code and I'm on a different mentee. So
Maybe that's why, Winston.
Oh, wow. All right.
I'm sorry, I grabbed that from the letter. But I guess, do you want to try and go into menti.com and enter the 52553832?
yeah, that's what I did, and I found it now. I just missed a few of the earlier ones. So
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Glad you're so resourceful.
Yeah, Kate definitely mentioned it, and I thought we were fine. So sorry, Kate. Definitely have a limited capacity sharing my screen. Couldn't investigate it quite that well. But I'm actually gonna go in and make it asynchronous now, because we've all kind of gone through it and it should not affect you all's voting ability. You all should be able to go ahead and make your votes. I'll just do that.
So Winston, the only thing I could find that's still up in my browser is I'm not convinced it's the right thing for you and what you're looking for to close this out.
Oh, it's okay.
I have a slide on this that says meeting productivity. How did you feel about this meeting? Was it useful or productive? What can we do better in the next one? And then there are a number of, that was like a later, oh no, this is coming up. I'm in your presentation. So are these slides not showing up for you, or we just haven't voted on them yet, I think?
No, yeah, I was just asking. I thought they were good for us to utilize and vote on.
Yeah, no, they're good for you to utilize.
All right,
That's
yes.
why we made them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So now,
Totally
geez,
good for you.
everyone. Now the voting is asynchronous. Oh, so I guess that means that I can't really move forward on that. Well, it's asynchronous. After you get to the resource regeneration slide, there's another slide about productivity. It offers, the chance to provide feedback because, we talked about a lot, introduced tons of conversations. And ultimately, if this wasn't impactful and effective for you all, and understanding who we are and why we're doing all of this, then we need to go back to the drawing board and reassess how we're discussing these very complex issues, because we do need, we will eventually need you all's help, but we also need to set the foundation and the stage so that it's not a heavy burden to lift. I want you to just come by and get the baton and just take off because you've been equipped and trained and socialized to be change makers and innovative thinkers. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and we can actually make sure we go ahead to.
Yeah, so what happened, Winton, was those slides were locked and I have now unlocked them. So if you want to continue with the presentation, we can get to those slides. That was my fault.
Okay.
So if you want to go back for the last 5-8 minutes, we can do that. If you want to just end this here, we can do that too. I'm sorry, I misunderstood and I totally set that up poorly for you. Apologies.
It's all right. Let's see. That's the thing, guys, with sustainability. Like I said, it has to be data led. You need to get feedback for you to do anything. And the biggest struggle that I've had in my role and in this industry and profession is adequately gathering that feedback. So definitely would love for you all to scan the link and just share your thoughts and comments on the entirety of the event. Ultimately, this is what we do. This is what I do on a daily basis. This is a very crucial and critical to the success of the constituents I serve, but also for all of us and everyone in my network. Because as much as I'm a force and an advocate and somewhat of a face for urban efficiency group, I consider myself a community pillar within Northwest Indiana, where I'm based, but also in the Midwest, because it's going to take us as passionate, and honest and inclusive leaders to really change the way that we're engaging with the environment, society, and sustainability for all. Hopefully. And I think we can kind of end it on this survey. I think it does encapsulate most things. Definitely still want to plug Greentown, the Climate and Equity Conference. As great as this event was, it's going to be even much more impactful because we will be in person. You won't see me on the screen. You'll see me in the flesh, and I believe we'll all be able to kind of thrive and vibe off of this energy and understanding that it's not one person's job. It's not one person's responsibility it's not one person's burden. It's all of our burden. So instead of thinking of it as I gotta save the world, no, we can all save the world together, in a very natural and a humane way. That's how I see society moving forward, and us all getting old and living merry lives together. But thank you all so much for attending. Ted, Laura, and everyone within Chicago Wilderness Alliance have been such a huge help. Thank our attendees and the students. Thanks the executive team. I could go on for days thanking folks for their contributions. But I'm sure by now we're probably tired of hearing from me talk. So thank you all. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Again, we're always ready and excited to talk more about all these different things, but also find ways to give you all more agency and platforms to advocate and, be the change that you want to see in society. So I'm going to hang around for questions, comments, but thank you all again.